I miss you guys. I want to do a quick demo for you today. So I've been thinking a lot about heritage, just because I keep watching the news and seeing things all over the world, and people are getting really upset about different countries and stuff. I think it's really important to think about where we've come from and think about the cultures that have influenced us. So today I'm going to do an American spin on a dessert that comes from the United Kingdom, which is part of my heritage, so I have some Irish in me. Can you believe it, right? So the dessert is called Sticky Toffee Pudding. Now, in the UK, pudding does not mean what we think pudding. So if I said pudding to you here in America, you would think little snack packs like chocolate, vanilla, butterscotch, cute little puddings, or some kind of custard if you made it from scratch. Banana pudding are really popular here in the South. But in the UK, pudding is a little bit different. And I actually asked our assistant principal, Mr. Mark Fowler, what a pudding means to someone from the UK.
Okay guys, it's got to be very quick. Pudding is not like a cream pudding with us. It'd be more textured, much thicker, and it's our dessert. Hope that helps. Bye.
So a traditional sticky toffee pudding is a super moist cake that is just drowned in this awesome velvety toffee sauce, and it's super awesome. So this moist cake is flavored with dates, and dates are a fruit from the date palm tree, which is grown in really tropical regions. It's kind of like a giant raisin, but tastes more brown sugary, and it's really, really delicious. It's probably about this big, and it is kind of wrinkled. Usually you get it dried, especially because it's not grown around here, so it has to be dried when it comes in. But today we're gonna do a twist on it. We're actually gonna make it with bananas because I have bananas to use up. So I have most of my mise en place already done, but a couple of quick things that I want to show you about my mise en place. So the first one is the bananas. So if you've ever made or seen someone or heard someone talk about making banana bread, banana muffins, stuff like that, they always tell you to use super duper ripe bananas, which is super true, because if you eat a green banana, it's really starchy and not very sweet, and as it gets darker and more brown spots, it gets more sweet, it gets more caramelizing flavor and more complex flavors, and that's what we want. But we can do better, because we always want to do better. So this really cool thing happens if you take a banana that's gotten as far as it can with all the little brown spots and you actually freeze it. What happens is it continues to ripen in the freezer without spoiling like it would if it was in the refrigerator or on the counter. So we get even more intense banana flavor, which is really hard to do any other way. So the fun twist about that is it looks really disgusting. So if you want to come in closer, ooh, my oven's ready. You can see these bananas. So they are pretty kind of gross and mushy looking, right? And you can see little waters come out. If you were here with me, you could smell just like intense banana flavor. So we're gonna have a really intense banana flavor. You could do the same thing if you're making a banana pudding, any kind of banana product, banana cream pie, right? Do the same thing and you're gonna get like this really awesome banana flavor punch. So I need 3 of these for this recipe. So like I said, it's a little icky looking, super crazy soft banana. Boop. Which does make life a little easier when I go to mash it, because it's almost pureed itself, actually. Oh my gosh, as soon as you open that, oops, you can just smell all the banana goodness. Another great thing about being able to freeze your bananas means that you get to decide when your bananas are ready. So normally a lot of people, they're like, oh, my bananas are ripe, I have to make banana bread today. Well, that's not how the industry works. Sometimes you need bananas earlier or later. So it's nice to have this flexibility. So all you gotta do is thaw it. So I'm just gonna take this and I'm gonna mash it with my fork. And how much I mash it is kind of up to me. I wanna get most of it pureed, but if there are a couple little chunks, it's totally cool, because then I'll just have a little bit of texture. But this stuff is so liquidy already. Even if I don't get it all the way pureed, it'll actually continue to puree as I put it in the mixer a little bit later. All right, so the other very funny thing that I have to show you is one of my ingredients I didn't have. We are, using our stay-at-home orders, and I'm trying not to go to the store so much. So I didn't have buttermilk, and this recipe called for buttermilk. So what you can actually do is you can make your own version of buttermilk. And what you typically do is you would take milk and an acid, usually lemon juice or vinegar. You'd combine them together, let them sit and curdle. I don't even have milk, but I happen to have soy milk. So I'm gonna do the same thing with soy milk, and I'm gonna add vinegar to it. In a perfect world, I'd have buttermilk. In a more perfect world, I would have milk. In this world, I have almond milk. In a very perfect world, I would prefer lemon juice as my acid here. I don't have lemon juice. In the next version of my perfect world, I would have a white vinegar. I don't have that because I actually used it all earlier for a marinade for dinner, and I totally forgot that I was doing this demo. So I'm actually gonna use a dark vinegar, which is gonna make this look really weird and funny. But it's actually not gonna be so bad. So this is balsamic vinegar. Hopefully you guys remember when we did our strawberries, how that kind of rich caramelized flavor in balsamic vinegar. It's actually gonna pair really well with our bananas, but it's gonna kind of look funny. So I'm actually gonna combine these real quick, and I'm gonna let them sit. And what's gonna happen is the acidity is gonna curdle our milk a little bit, so it's gonna look a little funny, but it's actually what we want. You can actually see it's already a little thicker already. But it's gonna sit here for a couple minutes and get thick for us. So it kind of replicates buttermilk in that sense. All right, I'm gonna sit that aside. That's gonna take a little while. So while that's doing its thing, I'm gonna talk about the mixing method. Lucky for you, it's a mixing method you are super comfortable with, and it's called the creaming method, and I know you all remember the creaming method, but this is a variation. So when we make cookies, we did the creaming method. Cake creaming method is a little bit different at the end. First two steps are the same, third step is a little bit different. So I'm sure you remember that the first step of the creaming method is to cream your butter and sugar. So right here in our mixer, I have my butter, solid fat, right? And my sugar. My sugar looks a little different because I get organic sugar for me personally, but white sugar is exactly what you would use here. That's the only reason mine's not like a pure white. So I'm gonna go ahead and get this creaming, get it all nice and light and fluffy. And my buttermilk's gonna keep on curdling over there. Very important in this recipe that all of your ingredients be room temperature. If we had butter or things that were too hot, we actually, our air bubbles so remember we cream it, we get lots of air into our batter when we cream it, make it light and fluffy, it gets lots of air, right? If our butter was too soft, like it was warm, we put it in the microwave, we got it too hot, as it expands in the oven, it's gonna burst too quickly, so we're not gonna get the same rise that we want. Opposite happens if it's all cold, it won't create as much air as we'd like, so that still won't get the same rise. So it's very important that everything is room temperature, so all of my stuff has been sitting out for a little while, all right? So I'm gonna get my butter and sugar creaming till it's nice and light and fluffy, and then I'll go on to the next step. Alright, so my butter and sugar are nice and light and fluffy, and they've gotten really pale. If you make this at home and you have pure white sugar, it actually will be a little paler. Remember, my sugar has that little bit of a brown tinge, so it's not quite as pale, but it's nice and pale, and that's exactly what we're looking for. So as always, I'm going to scrape the bowl, and hopefully you remember what our second step in the creaming method is, and that's adding our eggs. And we add them all at once, right? No, chef. I miss you guys. Can you tell? Now I'm talking to myself. So we're gonna add our eggs one at a time, not always gradual. We were making a giant batch, it wouldn't be one at a time, but today will be because we only have 3. So I'm gonna add one at a time. Having all of our ingredients room temperature also helps with this emulsification. So remember, our butter and sugar obviously has a lot of fat in it because it's butter. Our egg has a lot of water in it. Fat and water hate each other. So what we need is an emulsifier, and we're lucky because nature is amazing, and there's an emulsifier called lecithin naturally found in our egg yolks. So they will come together, but we have to be patient and let it happen. So always one at a time. If we add too much liquid to this butter, it'll just split and it'll be a hot mess. So one at a time, scraping throughout. And man, it smells like banana over here already. All right, first egg is done. I've scraped the bowl, so I'm actually gonna go ahead and add my second egg. And I'm gonna let that go until it's all incorporated. All right, bowl scraped again, and egg number 3. Okay, so right now everything should seem pretty familiar because we've already done this method with cookies many times. So with our creaming method with cookies, right now we would just add all the flour. If there's any chocolate chips or nuts or anything, we'd add it after that and we'd be done. But we have some ingredients that we didn't have before, namely lots of liquid ingredients. So for this recipe, we have some mushed bananas, some vanilla, and our buttermilk substitute. It could be milk, it could be water, it could be fruit purees, pumpkin puree, those kinds of liquids. So we're actually not going to add the flour all at once. When we're doing anything that's like a thin batter, we want to alternate our dry ingredients with our wet ingredients. I still want to combine all my dry ingredients, so in this bowl I have flour, I have salt, and I have baking powder and baking soda, which is actually why we needed to make sure we added that vinegar in, right? Remember, our baking soda needs an acid to react. If we didn't add that vinegar or lemon juice or whatever acid you might have, you'd get that metallic taste because it wouldn't have the baking soda wouldn't react, and that would be icky and gross. So we always want to mix all our dry ingredients. We don't want to count on them being mixed in here. And if we do that, we have to overmix it, and then we have tough cake, and that's no fun. So these are all combined. And now I can combine my wet ingredients. So I've got my fake buttermilk here, and you can actually, if you come in closer, you can see that it has curdled a little bit. You see these kind of little chunkies? Seems really wrong, but it's actually what you want. When you add acid to dairy milk, it causes it to curdle. It's actually how cheese is made. Really simplified version of how cheese is made, but it kind of replicates how buttermilk works. So I'm gonna add a vanilla, and you could have added the vanilla in with the eggs like we did with the cookies. Honestly, it's such a small amount of liquid, it doesn't really matter that much. So I'm just gonna add it here. So we're gonna alternate our wet and dry. Whenever you're doing the creaming method and you're alternating wet and dry, you're always gonna start and end with dry. So we're gonna do a third of our dry, half of our liquid, a third of our dry, half of our liquid, third of our dry. If we were to say, let's just add all the dry, what would happen is it would turn into something that resembles cookie dough. And then we try to add a whole bunch of liquid, and you'd get this like weird separation of like cookie dough pieces and liquidy cake batter, and it'd be very, very difficult to make it into one kind of cohesive batter without overmixing it. So we don't want to do that. The opposite, if we try to add all this liquid right now, there's already a lot of fat in here, so it could separate. It probably would separate because there's so much water going on in here. And even if somehow magically it didn't separate, we try to add all the flour, all that liquid would kind of circle around the clumps of flour, and you get chunks of flour. Either way, not very good, so we're actually going to kind of like just slowly add them together. So, lost my spatula, there it is. I'm going to add a third of my dry that I've already combined together. And remember, as soon as we add flour, gluten's going to start forming. So I'm actually going to just mix it until it's almost mixed, and then I'm going to go onto my wet. All right, so you can see there's still some dry pockets in here. That's exactly what we're looking for. Again, we don't want to overwork any of that gluten. We want nice tender cake. And as always, we're gonna scrape the bowl.
So that was very little mixing.
Very little mixing, absolutely. Very, very little.
To me, as a non-professional, that's very little mixing.
Absolutely. Because we do not want tons of gluten in here. So, now we're going on to half of our wet. And again, these are just approximations. If it's a little bit more, a little bit less, it's not the end of the world. And again, we're going to mix it until it's just about combined. Again, it won't take very long. So pretty close, not quite. As always, scrape the bowl. And if you're trying to make this at home, you don't have to have a stand mixer. It's nice. If you have a handheld mixer, this is totally doable in a handheld mixer. And it's also totally doable by hand because the butter is soft. It does take a little bit more time, but we all have plenty of time right now. And it could actually be really fun. You could get your parents, siblings, whoever lives with you involved and kind of take turns because it'll obviously take a little bit longer if you're doing it by hand. All right, so I've done a third of my flour, half of my wet, and I'm going back to flour. I'm gonna do another third, which is half of what I have left. And again, just gonna mix that until it's almost incorporated. Almost. Still a little bit dry bits, that's all right. Gotta love scraping our bowl. Now, half of our wet, which is the remainder, so I'm gonna dump all this in. This banana mousse is not the prettiest, is it? What do you think? But it smells real pretty. Back on till it's almost mixed. Oh, always hating on gluten unless we're in breads, right? All right, just about there. Scrape my bowl again. Now I'm gonna add the remainder of my dry. And I'm actually still gonna I'm still just gonna mix it till it's almost mixed. Remember, I can pulse it to make sure flour doesn't fly all over me. All right, so just about mixed. One or two little dry pockets. I'm gonna stop it now. So why do I stop it now? Because y'all know that I like to be in control of things, right? Yes, even you know that, cameraman, that I like to be in control. Oops, I missed some. So by mixing the last little bit by hand, I have more control over how much gluten is formed because I am slower than the mixer, a lot slower than the mixer. So I have a lot more control, a lot less gluten is going to be formed that way. That's why we clean our tables, right? So I'm just going to fold it through, mix it through by hand just to make sure. Oh my God, it smells so yummy. I love bananas. Make sure I don't see any dry pockets anywhere. I do see some, if you see some chunks in here, that's just the banana that didn't quite break down, which to me is fine. I kind of like that little bit of a texture. You would have the same thing in a sticky toffee pudding with the dates, so it's really, really similar. All right, so I'm happy with that. Traditionally, a sticky toffee pudding is baked in a larger dish, so like a cake pan or maybe even like a casserole pan, square pan, kind of whatever you want to do. I'm gonna do mine in a cupcake pan today for a couple reasons. One is me and Senor Chanko are trying to practice some portion control so we don't gain that quarantine 15. Two, it's a little bit cleaner to present if you were looking at this like on an industry perspective. Having those individual portions means every single portion is gonna be the same, it's gonna look the same. It also means that it's not gonna dry out as fast because you're gonna have baked edges, versus if we made a big version and we cut it, those cut edges will actually dry out a little bit faster, which we're gonna slather this in sauce later, you'll see. So it wouldn't be the end of the world, but we always wanna take that extra little step to make sure that it's as perfect as it can be. And honestly, I just think it makes a really nice presentation versus kind of the cut version. But if you're making this at home, bake it in whatever shape you want to bake it in. It doesn't really matter. You might not have a cupcake pan, you might have a casserole dish or whatever. Baking in that is totally cool. All right, so I'm gonna portion this into my cupcake pan, and then we're gonna get it into the oven.
So you've got them buttered up?
Oh yes, thank you. So, I would love to have muffin liners, but I don't have them. Again, not trying to go out to the grocery store, trying to do my civic duty and stay inside. So I have lined these with softened butter, and that's just gonna help make sure it doesn't stick. You could also use pan spray, but I don't have pan spray, so we use butter today. If you don't have either, you could actually do with a little bit of vegetable oil would be really helpful. So there's lots of options, so hopefully you can find one that you have. So I have the luxury of having a scoop at home because not having one makes me crazy. Don't remember the right size, but this looks like it's gonna be about right. Maybe a little bit more. Portion these out and get them in the oven. Okay, so I've divvied up the batter into my pans. Whatever pan size you use, you wanna make sure that the batter only comes up at 3/4, no more than that, because if it comes up anymore, you risk it spilling out. So if you had a casserole dish, it should only come up 3/4, so you don't want it to spill out. So that's what this looks like. I actually had to get a little creative, so this scoop wasn't enough, but 2 scoops is too much, but I have a smaller scoop, so there's one of these and one of these in mine. You may have to get creative with whatever you have. A lot of people will use kind of 2 spoons to kind of put stuff in. So you can see, because I had to do 2 scoops, that it's a little uneven looking. So I'm actually gonna bang it down on the table. It's gonna make it flat like these, which means it's gonna bake a little bit easier, or evener, more even, that's the word. So this is uneven, this one's nice and even. So I'm just gonna bang it down on the table real quick. It's gonna make it more even on top, so it's gonna bake a little bit prettier. But it's also gonna knock out any big air bubbles that might be in the batter, so we don't just have this like random big hole somewhere. All right, so real loud. Just like that. We're gonna get these in the oven real quickly, because remember when we have, we'll see if I can fit them on the same rack. We have baking soda, and it hits that acid, it's reacting right away. So this batter has a very short bench time. So we want to get it in the oven as soon as we can. So it's in there, and I'll come back when it's done. Okay, so my cakes have just come out of the oven, and we're going to check them for doneness the same way we did with muffins. And there's 2 methods. There's the toothpick test where we stick it in, it comes out dry. These have actually cooled a little bit, so it's pretty dry. In a perfect world, you'd have a little bit of moist crumbs on them, but this has been out for a little bit, so it's actually a little bit more solid. But straight out of the oven, had a little bit of crumbs. But my cameraman was mowing the lawn. Thanks, cameraman. And then the other test, because we might not have toothpicks at home, but hopefully we haven't lost our fingers yet, is to take our finger and just with a very light press, we push in and make sure there's no fingerprint left. So if I do that, you don't see any fingerprint, it springs back. That's a great indication that it's done. So I'm gonna let it cool and let my sauce cool, and then we'll get to plating. So the sauce is pretty simple. We're actually gonna put just everything in the pot and bring it to a boil. So far in my pot, I already have some brown sugar, some butter, some dark corn syrup, and honestly I didn't have all the dark corn syrup that I needed, so I used a little bit of light because, you know, we're not supposed to be going to the grocery store if we can help it. So sometimes we have to be flexible. That's true in the industry too, right? We can't just go grocery shopping every second, so we got to be flexible in the industry. So I have this on a high heat, and I'm gonna bring it to a boil. So I've boiled this for about 2 or 3 minutes and it's gotten a lot thicker. If you want to come in closer, you can see the volume is a lot less than it was. And if you watch the bubbles, they're bursting a lot slower. That's a great indication that it's thicker. And if I dip my spoon in there and I make a line, it holds it really, really sharp. You can see it's dripping off the spoon a lot slower, and it's actually gonna get slower as it cools. So that means that my sauce is ready. Obviously, it is boiling hot right now, so it's way too hot to serve. So I'm gonna let it cool a little bit, and then we'll serve it up. All right, so our cakes are out of the oven, and our sauce has cooled down a little bit, so it's time to plate. I would say, professionally, I'm not a huge fan of slathering stuff in sauce just because it doesn't really show a lot of skill in plating. Having said that, that is the signature of this dessert, is that it's this really moist cake just slathered in sauce. So you kind of it would be a shame to do it any other way, and it's really delicious that way. So I'm gonna plate it up real quick. Grab my baby offset spatula. Get one out of my pan. Now we could do it this way, but I actually like plating it this way. It's actually a little cleaner because of the mold than that. It's also a little bit more modern. So I'm gonna plate it upside down because I like to be different. And then I'm gonna get my awesome toffee sauce. You really want a lot of toffee sauce. So we're gonna drizzle it all over, and you want it to go all over the cake, and you want it to be kind of pooling around the cake as well, because it's delicious. You want to go a little extra step. Sometimes people will take a toothpick and stab little holes in it, and then the sauce can like really soak in it. That's really delicious too. So that is my American version of a traditional sticky toffee pudding. I hope you like it. If you make it at home, please, please, please send me pictures. If you make anything at home, please send me pictures. I'd love to see them and post them on Instagram to share all the amazing things you're doing. I miss you so much, and I can't wait to talk to you soon. Bye.